Now, just in talking to you, what I get a sense of is a sense of being, I guess, self-confident, not being arrogant or cocky, but just knowing yourself. So what did you do? What are the things, the practical things a person can do to get that sense of I'm sure of who I am and what I'd like to do in my life and want to do in my life. So what are the practices that you do on a regular basis to get there?
Do you know, I've been asked this several times, and eventually I started sitting down and actually analysing it rather than just answering question on question. And I believe there are actually 5 drivers in life which will bring us to success. The first driver is optimism. We've got to have an optimistic outlook for the future, and I always have had an optimistic outlook. I've always believed that no matter what's happening, there is something better. I can change things around myself. And I guess that comes from my parents. One of the things my father always used to say was, Derrick, every cloud has a silver lining. You've just got to look for it. And it's harder to see that silver lining than it is to see the cloud, but you've got to look for it. So when we have a sense of optimism for the future, we can keep on pushing ourselves because there's value in it. If we don't have a sense of optimism, if we don't have a sense of hope that there is something better, well, that's when we just sit back and go, why would I bother? There's nothing better out there. Why would I bother? So optimism is the first one. You've got to have that optimistic outlook. You've got to believe in your ability to influence your circumstances. Like there's been a global financial crisis, governments make decisions, our life partner, husband, wife will make decisions that we don't like. And sometimes there are influences on our lives we can't change. There's nothing that me from my position can do about a global financial crisis. I just have to deal with it. But it's the choices we make and the actions we take in our life, in our personal life, that affects the way that affects us. It may reduce our money, but we don't have to let it destroy our lives. The choices we make and the actions we take are the greatest influence in our lives and how much we're enjoying it. And we've got to believe in our ability to influence our future. And we've got to look to do that in every way we possibly can, not just sit back and let things happen around us. The next one is passion, and I think I've spoken about passion a little bit already. The fourth one is planning. And planning is something that I think we all do on a regular basis. But sometimes when things get bigger, we don't consciously plan for it. But planning for me doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be detailed. It doesn't have to be written down. For me, planning is just simply some idea of what we might encounter and some idea of how we're going to deal with it. And it really is taking that realistic look at what we might encounter on a day-to-day basis in our own lives and saying, if that does happen, how am I going to manage it? But in planning, lots of people plan for the worst things. Right? They say, if the worst things happen, this is what we need to do. All of our contingency plans, all of our evacuation plans for fires, all of our hazard management plans are for what things need to be done if everything goes wrong. I think we also need to plan for the future when things go right as well. Because one of my biggest anticlimaxes in my life was the day that I returned to Star Group on full duties with no restrictions, the day that I was able to go operational again. Since the shooting, it had been 2.5 years that I had been fighting, struggling, learning how to use my fingers, then learning how to operate weapons, then learning how to run, building my fitness, building up my skills to be able to go back to Star Group, proving myself to medical people, to boss, all this stuff. My whole focus had been on getting back to Star Group. Or actually, let me go back a step. My first priority was always just to get back to my family. And once I'd achieved getting back to my family, I was then able to look at getting back to other things in my life. But Star Group, I'd been focused on it for 2.5 years, just driving myself to get back to Star Group. And I remember walking in through that door of Star Group on that first day, fully operational, was the biggest anticlimax of my life. Internally, I was going, yes, I am here. And I wasn't doing it, out in the open. It was all internal. Yes, I have made it. Damn, what do I do now? Because I didn't have any other goals. This was the one thing that I'd been focused on. I hadn't planned, if this works out, what will I do? And I remember it hitting me like a sledgehammer. It was just the biggest anticlimax of my life. So having reflected back on that, I didn't realise it at the time, but reflecting back on it, I realised that we do need to plan for all the bad things that might happen. But we need to plan for those big things, those great things that are going to happen too. And the other thing that I'll say about planning is that there is no plan that will survive encounter with the enemy. It's an old military adage. There is no plan that will survive encounter with the enemy. So whenever you implement a plan, those buggers out there are going to do something you didn't anticipate. So you've got to plan in flexibility. And I relate this back to some of our star group training, that our star group training is absolutely regimented. I know what the guy next to me is thinking before he thinks it, because we have gone through training so much, and our plans are so regimented that I know exactly how he's going to hit a window or door or whatever to effect an entry. But as much as it's absolutely regimented, we also regiment the fact that you've got to be flexible. If things go wrong, if somebody sees a different opportunity, all that planning for that part is flexibly moved back around this corner and you go and implement it there. So as much as planning is important, you've got to plan in flexibility too. Not regiment, this is the plan and we'll stick to the plan no matter what happens. Allow it to change. And the last thing for success, the last driver for success is support. And this is not about throwing support at other people, because we like to help other people. We like to see other people succeed. Other people like to see us succeed as well, but they can't help us unless we actually throw our hand in there and say, hey, listen, I need some assistance. And we need to be bold enough to put our hand in the air and say, please, can I have some assistance? There's something here I don't know how to manage. This is bigger than I've ever imagined. And better still, I've got this brilliant idea, but I don't know how to implement it. There's something sensational I want to do. Can you give me some assistance? And, coincidentally, that's exactly how my TV series might come about. That's where I've got my